All right, thank you everybody for coming out. We will now start tonight's keynote. Just a couple announcements. Again, if speakers have come in and I have not had a chance to introduce myself, my name is Matthew Kroll. I'm a third-year student in the Philosophy and Literature program. That is Strand Shalbal-Thomason, who you've been communicating with, also a third-year student in the Philosophy and Literature program. There are folders and pencils in the back for all of our speakers, students included. Also, there's a sign-up sheet. You can put your name, your institution, or Purdue department, and your email address if you want us to contact you when the video is up, and just if you generally want to stay in contact with the Philosophy and Literature program. And again, thank you to everyone for coming out, especially those of you that have traveled. Thank you for making the effort. And now for tonight's keynote address, Dr. Victor Raskin received his PhD in Mathematical, Structural, and Computational Linguistics from Moscow State University. Before joining the English department here at Purdue, he held positions at Tel Aviv University and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel, as well as at the University of Michigan. Dr. Raskin has made invaluable contributions to his field, both locally and internationally. He is the founder of Purdue's Graduate Interdepartmental Program in Linguistics, as well as the founder and supervisor of the Center for Education and Research in Information Assurance and Security, or CERIAS, and the Natural Language Processing Laboratory here at Purdue. Also the founder of Humor, International Journal of Humor Research, the flagship journal, which I believe is now in its 27th volume. He was the first elected academic president of the International Society of Humor Research and one of the founders of the field of computational humor. His book, Semantic Mechanisms of Humor, 1985, offered the first full-fledged theory of humor and put linguistics in the front of this multidisciplinary area. Please join me in welcoming tonight's keynote speaker reading his paper, The Theory, Philosophy, and Practice, Applications of Humor Research, Dr. Victor Raskin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here and to follow one of my favorite students in the humor seminar, Sophia Stone. I don't know why we were lied about the number of her children. It's not 1.5, it's at least 1.7 estimation. Sophia was absolutely delightful. She disagreed with absolutely everything that she heard from me and my co-instructor, Professor Julia Taylor, and what she agreed with, she didn't like either. And she wrote a brilliant paper. And that was when? 3 years ago?
It was 2008. So
2008. And that was a long time ago. We teach, or I teach this seminar cross-listed between English and linguistics, and whoever else wants to cross-list it every other fall. I think the odd number, it should be odd number, years. I will use a few slides from here and there, from several presentations. This one is a version which was produced for the 2012, I don't remember its number, 2012 meeting of that society, International Society for Humor Studies. We meet every year, once in the States, and well, alternate between the States and the rest of the world. We treat the world as appropriately, the really American way, as just two countries, America and otherwise. The state of otherwise can be very remote. We met, I did go in Malaysia, and you have all heard of the consequences. Unlike Sophia with me, I often found myself in agreement with Sophia, and today as well, I noticed, and in this context it may sound as an accusation, from me it's a compliment, that she used theory and philosophy interchangeably. I do too. The theory of humor is the philosophy this is not a popular view. I am treated as the god of human research. And it's a lot of fame and absolutely no cash. If you find a way to trade about some of it for cash, I will be very grateful. And I am a very inconvenient god, because I keep making pronouncements, and the pronouncements are all about needing a theory. People want to talk about their favorite comedian or this and that, how it belongs to another field that they are mostly present. I'm also a very limited part-timer in human research. We have made incredible gains in establishing human research as a respectable academic field in this country, where you can be promoted and tenured and stuff, but always as a part-time human researcher and being something else as well. My something else is many different hats, but mostly computational semantics, meaning of natural language, which I have applied everywhere, including philosophy of language and human research, and lately primarily in natural language processing, which is the natural language part of artificial intelligence. Hence computational humor, where I will very gently and almost inconspicuously take you. It's not as monstrous as I thought when I was inventing it. This comes from a different field, but from a different talk. But yes, I will talk about the need for a general theory. Need to unify the field is a specific human research concern. There are about 1,000 of us, pretty high-level, high-powered researchers, coming from at least 20 different fields, including pure mathematics and medicine and all the social sciences. The leading disciplines have been psychology before me and linguistics after me. In fact, both of those should coexist, and I'm urging my counterpart on the psychological side, a brilliant psychologist of personality, Willy Ruch, a German-educated Austrian who holds the chair of the theory of personality at the University of Zurich, to do something together. The linguistics of humor is usually declared to be the cognitive aspect of humor, and psychology the emotional side of it. I will not have much time to talk about what they do differently. The answer is everything, and how they should be integrated. But my idea has been, and that's why I'm very inconvenient presence, I tell all those human researchers from different fields that we should all unify and do things together and develop a general theory of humor. The current editor of the journal that I founded, editor number 4, I think, a brilliant young, 42 is young, right? A brilliant young sociologist and a chairholder, full professor in her native Holland, which is a big thing. Hisalinda Kuiper, who doesn't want me to pronounce her name the English way, a native speaker of Russians, she says, you can't pronounce my real name, which is Hisalinda. So Hisalinda always, who is a sociologist, uses statistics, hates the very idea of theory, and considers my attempts to do precisely this, including the need for ontology, that I'll have a chance to mention. She declares it to be an act of linguistic imperialism. And she's right, because linguistics is the most theoretically and philosophically and methodologically developed discipline, which may pretend to be like those. Other disciplines is often administratively under the same college, school, whatever roof, and yet very different. I'll touch on something that I will not be talking about, but in response to you, sir, and Sophia's answer. The theory, the family of theories that I have developed first alone and then with co-authors, as one of my favorite PhD students here, Professor Amy Carroll, noticed in her dissertation, prior to her dissertation, doesn't deal with the theory of the audience at all. It describes the jokes as if we were all alike, and of course we are not. However, there is one universal principle that the theory makes available, and that is what she developed in her own brilliant, have I used the word brilliant before? The brilliant 1993 dissertation. She has been full professor for a long time in yet English linguistics. We started producing dissertations in linguistics after 1995, and it's available digitally as well. It was the huge promise of progress in that. She has since published a couple of papers in humor. I published them when I was still editor, but the book it was supposed to become has not materialized. And the idea is that we all have a set of scripts available for humor. But the sets are different. We won't allow humor, don't feel humor about certain subjects. I had thought, I had been interested in humor for a long, long time before I developed the theory. I was just waiting for my own efforts in contextual semantics to reach the stage when it could be applicable to humor. But throughout that process, I had proudly thought of myself as totally impervious to any kind of humor. That is no sensitivity whatsoever. I would appreciate any joke. I'm Jewish, I know it comes as a horrible surprise to you. And anti-Semitic jokes were perfectly okay. All of that ended in 1982 when my number of children catapulted from 0 to 1, and it was at that time that a very major senior publisher, editor at Valentine, I think, promoted his own series of dead baby jokes. It started out with dead cat jokes, how you can use a dead cat for as a doorstop and stuff. And then it projected to dead babies, and those of you who are parents and probably know it from experience, and those of you who are philosophers know it not from experience, that parents are very worried about the well-being of their children. At that time, sudden infant death was written about, and so I lived in horror. And I didn't find those jokes funny. And then, hugely negatively for myself, I realized that having hated Freud virulently all my life, Wittgenstein takes a distant second after Freud. I agreed with the old lecturer on one thing that he said: we don't feel disposed towards humor about which we have strong feelings. And so that is partly classical, soft response, and partly based on the theory, scripts. I didn't have, well, the script of a dead baby was taboo for me, so it was not available for humor. Realistically, we'll walk around with different scripts. And when Jimmy Carter went to Poland while he was president and tried to tell a Polish joke, he hadn't even realized that Polish jokes were not Polish. Nobody in Poland knew that they were Polish-American jokes, which immediately gave rise to a joke about Jimmy Carter trying to tell a Polish joke to the Polish Pope. And the Pope says, but I'm Polish myself. And Jimmy Carter says, never mind, it's okay, I will tell it very, very slowly. Well, I had to put in this, what does a major theory of humor do? Please me, because everybody knows that I need a major theory at the audience, in the audience there. And here is what it is supposed to do. It should range over the entire domain of humor. It comes with a toolbox. That is linguistic imperialism. No theory in linguistics comes without methodology about how to apply, to describe language, or to do whatever you need to do. And it defines each specific theory in terms of each specific result, like description or representation of a joke, in terms of particular format, based on the same premises, on the same goals, and evaluation. So there is a little bit of that, and then I will change gears. Of course, a major theory explains what is funny and why it is funny, how it is funny, when it is funny, and to whom it is funny. I addressed that one. I never addressed it. If the theory wouldn't have addressed it without Amy Carroll's input. Sophia mentioned the script-based semantic theory of humor. That was my first contribution, and grossly overrated. That is, nobody read my disclaimers about what else must happen in order for it to have any utility or whatever. Nobody in humor research had ever seen a theory. I am sorry to report that until this day, there is no particular building or cage for theory in any zoo in the world. So nobody had seen it before. And what linguists do before, after, and instead of breakfast is build theories. It's extremely easy for us. And it's supposed to frame and answer every possible question about humor. One of the most important things which don't want to escape your attention is that I'm a Popperian. I am trained in philosophy. I have a faculty ID in philosophy here. I have served on philosophy promotion committees when philosophy didn't have its own 5 required professors. I have taught philosophy of language. I have kvetched. I hope everybody is a competent Yiddish speaker here. I kvetched about the things that philosophy of science offers and doesn't deliver. My good friend Jan Kova agrees with me on that. I am a follower of Karl Popper, whom I was proud to call for a long time the last living great philosopher, and then he let me down by dying. But he's certainly the longest living philosopher from the Viennese circle, Sir Karl Popper, who famously wrote in his Objective Knowledge book that we have no theories, we have only hypotheses which have not yet been falsified. So when you come with a theory, which is a hypothesis, you owe it to yourself, to the theory, to the readers, speed-based semantic theory, what happens at those international society of human studies meetings and lesser conferences, people are trying to falsify speed-based semantic theory. We'll see what it declares to be a counterexample. In my book, a huge section was devoted to seeking a counterexample in the most plausible places and failing. If a hypothesis cannot be falsified practically in principle, it can, it's very simple. Then, until it is a theory. The ultimate goal of any theory is to define a set of necessary and sufficient conditions. If X is a joke, then Y. If Y, then X is a joke. Of these, the sufficient conditions are much more difficult and much more problematic. We often have any number of necessary conditions, and they all fail on the reversal. I like your word avowal, but the closest I can come to it is reversal. It ends in L. We don't have a set of conditions such that, as we say, for instance, about verbal jokes, text, if a text satisfies these conditions, then it is a joke. That's one of the reasons my theory and the entire family of theories that it has lived through three iterations I will mention that I hope people assume that I have this set of sufficient conditions. I don't. They are often referred to as constitutive conditions as well. As an example, John Searle, my good friend John Searle, has written extensively about it. The game of chess, for instance, is constituted by its rules. It doesn't exist before that. And any game which has abided by these rules is chess. There is something, has anybody heard of the latest phrase? I was interviewed this morning by a writer from the New Yorker, which I subscribe to, but this is only for NewYorker.com, who wanted to write about the theory of benign violations. Has anybody heard of that? I'm in the right place. It's a perfectly benign thing. A very nice guy, young, 40. Peter Monroe from Colorado somewhere, who is an economist and management professor there, realized that many jokes deal with a benign violation of common sense or morality or this or that, and showed how they correlate, ran a few of what he considers psychological experiments about how people consider these violations to be benign compared to crimes and things. And a very talented journalist who has been around our community for a good 20 years, has written very well about humor. Normally the media likes to write about the funniest joke in the world and quoting people who are not humor researchers who come up with something sensational. David Jacobson, previously based in Detroit, whatever the newspaper, main newspaper, has written well. He liked benign violation. He has written several articles in major places, and the book is coming out. And so now there is a new theory of benign violations, which fails, doesn't begin actually to answer any of these questions. Peter Monroe has no responsibility for it. He is a responsible, modest guy. He said there is a necessary condition for some jokes. There's a set of jokes such that they display a benign violation. If you have a benign violation, that doesn't make a joke. No, necessary, no sufficient, lots of jokes do not correlate to any benign violations. It's not his responsibility. He is not responsible. He never thought of creating a theory. An observation. There are many others. I thought to give you an absurd example that some jokes are about oranges. Is it a theory? And then I realized I have never heard a joke about an orange. Has anybody?
Yes.
Can anybody share?
Knock, knock.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Right, but it's not about oranges, technically. It's just a trick. I think an orange is not funny by definition. I need to go and read Freud about it. And hate Freud has been dead since 1939. Remains the first most cited author in human research, and yours truly comes as a distant second, because I have the decency of quoting him just to show that he said nonsense, and he doesn't quote me back. And for somebody like Freud, the fact that she is dead is very feeble excuse. Here is what a real theory should have, and it's heavy stuff. We all know the body of the theory. In Peter Monroe's case, if it were a theory, it would be every joke corresponds to, displays, reveals, maybe reduced to a benign violation. My theory would say that every joke is a juxtaposition of two different scripts which are partially or fully compatible with the text. We know all of that. And what we don't know, the theory builder, is an art, it's a skill, it's a science of theory building. You have to define your purview, where it works and where it stops. You have to do the most difficult thing in the world, to realize what the premises are. They are very barely introduced explicitly. In any argument, including the best-known political arguments or whatever, the clash is not between the statements of the body, but between the premises that the adherents of those theories don't mention explicitly. The goals are different, and hard-proper methods of falsification, and there should be justification and evaluation. This situation applies much better to the general theory of verbal humor, which replaced script-based semantic theory of humor 6 years later, because that one was set up as multidisciplinary. My script-based semantic theory proudly and stupidly refused to judge jokes. Say, we are not in this business. Of all those questions, like why humor, for instance, linguistics has no answer to that. I'm not qualified. Psychology should take over there. Whoever else, just not me. Then I realized that, in fact, there is some answer in linguistics. Also, this is linguistic materialism. I said linguistics cannot, my linguistic-based, semantic, linguistic, natural language, meaning-based theory of humor cannot grade jokes to their quality. Not my task, not my purview. In fact, it turns out that a little bit of that is still possible. But there was the goal was to represent the meaning explicitly of every short joke. Short verbal joke, preferably canned joke. The difference between canned and situational jokes was set up by a great, completely atheoretical and charming man who is probably about 160 years old now, and still alive and well, a retired Stanford psychiatrist by the name of William Fry. Jr., no, I think he's the third, but he signs it as Bill Fry. He distinguished in his 1963 book between situational jokes, that is, jokes that are created on the fly, and canned jokes. The difference is that a canned joke can follow, have you heard the one about? And it will be reproduced from memory, usually very poorly. But with giving away the punchline, laughing before the presenter, all those things which are death sentences to a joke. My theory was designed for short, canned jokes. And the first thing that happened is that my devoted disciples, and I have raised probably 50 to 70 human researchers, including really major one, Professor Salvatore Attardo, who was producing major research, and then the disaster struck, he became dean. Justification and evaluation I will probably talk the least about. And theory is good if it is, these are actually sufficient condition for humor. If it's adequate, effective, constructive, decidable, computable, and this is where computational humor comes in, explicit and formal, and there are some people for whom all of these are just compliments, like I'm saying. It should be excellent, 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 brilliant, excellent, excellent. No, they're absolutely different properties, and there are theories which mix and match, and there may be still good theories without being all of them. And in any situation, there is a theory methodology description. Triple where the description is the final result. It is not a good term for that. With jokes, in semantics, it is a description or representation. But the theory and methodology should be there. Without that, theory is not constructive, and without that, it cannot be a linguistic theory. It can be a philosophical theory. John Searle has not invented, but developed and established speech act theory, which is wonderful and useful, and it's totally non-constructive. That is, if you ask John, yes, this is the set of necessary and sufficient conditions for what is happening to be understood by all of us as a speech act of promise. We have intuition, and we establish it this way. What's the procedure for verifying that the speech act of promise? Well, ask the native speakers. In psychology, it is a procedure. On the cognitive side, it is not. There should be a set of formal rules if it is a linguistic theory. So 2 or 3 attempts, very valid by the best of us, to transfer speech act theory into meaning postulates. Jerry Morgan has tried twice to do it. George Lakoff was the first, has never taken shape. So theory of humor should be constructive. The first thing that happened by my excellent disciples was to ignore the purview that I set up. They said, oh, I will work on the funniness, the humor of short stories. And I tried to discourage every single one of them. I said, yeah, of course, but you are on your own. Don't think that this theory, which works for one individual joke, will transfer to why a short story is funny. Will you try and present it as a rapid sequence of jokes, like a stand-up comedian does? Incidentally, I have class in introduction, explaining to them that the only thing that Chomsky has done wrong was not to die young. Because if you are a genius, you must be like Évariste Galois to remain the best mathematicians of all times and be killed in a duel at the age of 23. So, anyway.
21.
21? I had to change all my views. Yeah, he started, I think, producing at 30, something like that. People were adults much earlier. Then, okay. Incidentally, Salvatore Attardo produced a 2001 or 2002, 2001 book where he developed a kind of a sequel or extension of our theories of humor to apply to novels and things like that. I have not gone there with him. He discovered, he talked about jab lines, which is some combination of individual jokes. Another brilliant former PhD student of mine, Katrina Triesenberg, she was called at the time, challenged him, with whom she had taken a seminar, already a major scholar, that linguistics should not take full responsibility for literary humor. And I chaired now legendary session of 2004 conference in Dijon, where Victor Raskin chaired a session where two of his best students, one current and one former, were destroying each other. That was the show in town. And, well, I pretended that as a gentleman, I must side with the woman. But in fact, I sided with her in reality. So the purview, my purview remains as is. A quick look on, it's still the philosophy of humor. And in the remaining time, I'll show you briefly how the individual theories work. General principles of what theory is applied to theory of humor. The purview is textual humor, most easily applicable to short canned jokes. Premises that a text can be recognized as a humor carrying a text in the process of normal linguistic semantic analysis. Even if you are not interested in humor, you discover properties in the text which suggest that it's a potential joke. I was very, very careful. Potential joke means I don't know whether it will fire with you or anybody else. Staying away from the theory of audience. Go mostly to account for how each joke works, and that amounts to understanding the way people do, and that is my real, not so secret goal. Theory of the mind and artificial intelligence as a way to model it and to discover what it is, hence computational humor. Falsification, very easy, just find a joke which is not based on overlapping and opposed scripts, and there you have your counter example, and I promise I have done that. In fact, I absolutely crippled my sense of humor because I'm only interested in and appreciative of jokes which strike me as potential counterexamples. Because otherwise I recognize the pattern and this my stupid puns with erotic content, or what he thought was erotic content, which was primarily the idea of paying a woman for sex. I haven't tried it in a single time, but I just doubt that there is much erotics in that. And justification, I will not talk much about, but the only paper we wrote with Wilibald Bruch and Salvatore Attardo provided us early in 1991 a partial justification of general theory of human cost us a trip to the Niagara Falls instead of going with everybody from the nearby conference site. There we spent the entire day screaming at each other at a really bad sushi place. I'll skip over several things and go for script-based semantic theory. Here it is, a little bit improved in the direction of general theory of verbal humor, but not quite. The main hypothesis is the text of the joke is fully or partially compatible with two opposite scripts. The scripts are obtained in the course of regular, rigorous, descriptive semantic analysis of the text, not humor. This semantic analysis is unrelated to humor. And as I believe that only the script acquisition that is contributed by human research, because linguistics per se doesn't use it, I thought, in 1985, the latest iteration of the theory, ontological semantic theory of humor, has information on the opposition as well. This is the joke that everybody uses as a standard example, and we all hate it. But you cannot do anything in human research without that stupid joke, which I found in a 1930 collection of American humor. Is the doctor at home? The patient asked it, his bronchial whisper. People who know about medicine always correct me, it's not bronchial whisper, you don't lose your voice from bronchial whisper, it should be pharyngeal. Try to use it pharyngeal. Pharyngeal. That's it. The patient asked it his bronchial whisper. No, the doctor's young and pretty white whisper in reply, come right in. Predictably, everybody is rolling on the floor. You're actually paralyzed with the paroxysm of laughter. You cannot even move. It works interestingly. First MRI experiments showed that if you have a picture of the brain processing a sentence, there are certain things which are lit up in the sequence. The back part of the cortex, which is most of logical thinking. And to simplify it to a primitive stage, this lights up, and then there's a light bulb of euphoria here. Satisfaction. Works best with sex and chocolate. They are completely interchangeable. But also when the sentence is successfully processed. So Pete Dirks, a prominent psychologist of humor, now retired, but alive and well from the College of William and Mary, was the first to use MRI among the humor researchers, and it was thought to be dangerous. He subjected his own brain to it and showed it to us in 1991 at the same Niagara Falls conference. It was probably this joke that he started out with, or maybe the one he didn't know, I don't remember. Anyway, the cortex lights up, never reaches the euphoria, and the whole thing collapses. And then, immediately, the second run, and it reaches euphoria. That's pretty much what the script theory was supposed to capture. What my long-time collaborator, Professor Julia Taylor, who has taught the seminar in humor theories, and Sophia took it and twice ever since with me, she understands colors. I'm not colorblind, but I do not retain memory of colors. So the anti-medical health script. That is a patient with a problem, with a complaint in search of a doctor. And so he whispers to the wife, yes ma'am, what is
You
done?
need to have something up on the screen right now. Because you haven't since the beginning of your talk.
Do you realize that I have been changing slides on my computer, which is not connected? Okay, guys, apologies. Now you will have about 7.5 seconds per slide. How do I change? How do I change slides?
There's a clicker there if you want me to grab it.
Why have you inside? I have the full right to be an idiot like everybody else. What?
You were delivering a full English speech.
Hmm?
So I thought you were delivering a full English speech.
No, I mean, the presentation is here, it's transferred.
The presentation is.
It's here, yeah, but this thing doesn't.
Okay.
We get those.
Matt, you too.
Yeah. Okay, you see, that's everything I have been telling you.
Oh, we got that. Wow.
Victor, you have to point the clicker towards the computer for it to work, just
I'm
so you know.
perfectly happy with it.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, these are all of those things. These are things that I...
Feels right.
These are not, I didn't use. That's what I spoke about. The text is fully partially compatible. Now is the one where you really need to see. This is the joke. And the blue color marks the initial script. That is the way we recognize the situation. It's outdated, mind you. Rural doctor, I don't know, but anyway, the patient shows up at his residence, where apparently his office is, and that's why the wife is guarding the pigs. It's all changed now. The fact that I know where several of my doctors live means that I'm a very important person in this community, and I've lived here for 36 years. So if we stay with this script, it leaves us to nonsense. He wants to see the doctor. She says no. Why does she invite him in? And that's where Pete Dirk's brain collapsed. And then immediately we realize that there is sort of surreptitiously the second script was built up. Young and pretty wife, right? Doctors have young and pretty wives. And we all know very well that all young and pretty women are promiscuous, right? So, nobody's laughing. What if somebody takes me seriously and reports me to the authorities? The morality of 1930s. Notice that she whispers back. And she doesn't have bronchial pharyngeal condition. And then she says, come right in. And it doesn't take too much intelligence, and probably a child will not appreciate that. But the script of doctor has been replaced by the script of adultery. So he whispers, she mistakes the whisper for intimacy, not for affliction, and plays into it with, she establishes that the spouse is not at home and invites a man other than her husband to come right in. If only she had said, but he just called, he's on the way home, you can wait a bit. That's it. There is no switch. Come right in without any explanation is an excellent punchline. It is not even a punchline, but it is a punchline because it makes you switch scripts. And that's what happens any joke that you will be able to come up with in the next 5 or 10 minutes and for the rest of your lives. And if you do, you will become very famous in human research because the theory that everybody is sick and tired of will be falsified, and a better theory will replace it. Actually, a better theory already replaced it, but I basically have talked through that. Ooh. Look, read this joke if you are interested. It's mildly obscene, not really. When I teach this course, I used to, at the peak of political correctness, ask the students to sign a consensus form that they will not mind any dirty, unappetizing, prejudicial, offensive jokes on an understanding that they will never be presented for entertainment, but only for the purpose of an analysis. And some people stated their objections, and they could either withdraw from the course, or I would warn them if I needed to use a joke like that, and they would leave the room and not come to class on that day. Let me switch to another presentation. For about 5 minutes, I want to show you what general theory of verbal humor looks like. Escape. And is this outdated? Platform has windows where I can see what other presentations are.
It's down on the bottom, on the bar. Both Keynote 1 and Keynote 2 were open, so if you just highlight where it has PowerPoint.
Press Alt Tab too.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I don't see where it is. Can I probably?
Kind of view windows.
So here, you want Keynote 2, right?
Cannot hear Sophia covered this very well. The three leading classes of humor. I made it up, but everybody has called it. Since there are probably more like 4. Here is again the main hypothesis of the script-based semantic theory of humor. Here it is divided into 2 parts. It's pretty much the same analysis. And here is the general theory of verbal humor, which has kept 2. These are knowledge resources, 6 knowledge resources. The scripts are there from script-based semantic theory, and language, which is the text itself. But in between there is a logical mechanism, something that we have been arguing about ever since that justification experiment with Rook didn't show that the users were sensitive to it. Situation is what the joke is about, so in the standard Polish light bulb joke, the situation is changing the light bulb. Jokes have optional targets. That's the only knowledge resource which is optional, and so in the Polish joke, the Polish American, the interesting thing is that the target is practically never for real. There was an argument at the one ISHS conference that I hosted here back in 1988. A very good human researcher, political scientist, claimed that Polish Americans were targeted because of some circumstances of their difficulties of their integration, of their immigration, which was brilliantly countered by Christy Davis, the main sociologist of humor, with whom, if you have common sense, you never argue, because he has facts, statistics, and everything, and he showed that the Polish immigration was one of the most successful immigration, at least third to the most successful one, which was Jewish, Irish, and Polish, all measured in parameters of statistics of income, education of the first generation compared to the rest of the population. And the Poles were there with the first native born generation. So they were never stupid. At another conference, somebody said, "Oh, you don't know the Polish accent. They have to add the syllable ski to every English word. It's almost impossible to understand." I said, "Are you joking?" No, he was serious. So that's the target. And narrative structure is the form, is the genre, basically. Many jokes are presented as riddles. The specifics of American humor is the longest possible, the most verbose version of the joke, a top tape, which can run 2 or 3 pages. You will find the same joke in the top tape form on the internet and a European one-line of the same joke. Can be expository text, can be a riddle. Americans also like to present jokes as 1, 2, 3. The first man this, the second man this, the third man, and the punchline is delivered there. And I can stop here. There's a lot more, but I think I have fulfilled my nightly quota.
Dr. Raskin, questions? Questions, Dr. Raskin?
Yes, okay.
So,
I still like it.
okay. So, this is not really a question for understanding, but it might help with the audience. Can you define for us a script? Because I think you took it for granted that we would all know what script means. What do you mean by script?
Yeah, and it was sufficient for the purpose of this lecture. That is the intuitive thing. It is actually a formal unit of text and the basis of computer understanding of natural language, because we know that certain sentences, certain statements are part of a certain procedure, and we recognize them as such. So script is a sequence, not even necessarily contiguous, of statements which all correspond to a certain pretty standard situation. In things formal, computational, the most famous script is that of the restaurant script. One of the early computational semanticists, Roger Schenck, who has dropped out of the field a long time ago, described the restaurant field which gave away the fact that he knows only upscale restaurants. That is, you walk in and you wait to be seated. You are approached by another human being who asks you a question, which, if you don't know the script, makes absolutely no sense. How many? And in the script, it means how many of us are here. Interesting also that you can defy the sensory perception by saying 7 if you are the first person, or even if you are the first person and they can see only 1. They will give you a table for 7 people. And then you are given the menu, and then you order mostly 1 of which rubric, not necessarily every rubric, and so on and so forth. The reason it was developed for computer understanding is, unlike us humans who know the scripts, the computer and must be programmed to have that additional information. It's a very complicated notion, because if you start thinking about it, that every single verb stands for a script. Victor had some water. Well, first of all, I obtained water somehow, either in a container or sticking my mouth in the reservoir of water or whatever. Then I made sucking motions and swallowed, ingested a certain amount of water. It's a simple script, but it's a script. So the question is, and it's a big philosophical question in any area, including unrelated to language, but certainly in language, the grain size. That is, how far do you classify a thing? And must be in a container. Do I go into a theory of containers, geometric shape, or names, the material it is based on? You have to stop at a reasonable human grain size. We all have a perfectly decent, intuitive measure for when it's too much detail. And we're usually lazy. Laziness is a very noble property or trait. I always tell my students that it's a very lazy person who invented the elevator. And I'm very grateful to him. I know that it was a he, so I'm not being sexist here. And we stopped at a reasonably coarse level without going too fine into details. And if the hearers, the interlocutors, are not satisfied, they will ask us. Just like, would you like to do something tonight? No, I have plans. And for casual friends or whatever, that's sufficient. For a jealous lover, you want to know where the object of your love is going and how does she dare. Make sense? Good. I have deceived the audience. So, yes, sir.
You mentioned one of your interests was artificial intelligence, and I'm wondering, have there been any successful attempts in the realm of artificial intelligence to have either computers either recognize jokes or produce jokes?
Yeah, the most successful ones are the most stupid ones, as always the case. I invented the idea of computational humor on the bet. I have done many good things on the bet. Like, for instance, founding the Jewish Studies program at Purdue University, where I have never taught, because I don't do Jewish Studies on the bit. Professor Nelson of Political Sciences, now retired, still owes me a bottle of cognac for that. We were writing a joint paper with Salvatore Attardo in 91 and 92, one of his last years. It was published in 94. He wanted to move me in the direction that he was interested in. And he has followed up on that wonderfully later on. I have never since written on irony. He has. There were some other things. And we were doing, we had a computational linguistic grant, and we both were working on it. And I said, well, the whole idea of computation is there are two purposes, two goals for computation. One, to have a system which does something useful. That I do only for big bucks from the government, because I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in formalizing my theory to the level when the computer can understand, because then I know that all the information is there and it is represented, etc. In this sense, we haven't been successful, though we're moving there. Not fully successful, we will probably never be fully successful. To declare us to be fully successful is to go back to the naive 1980 myth live from MIT labs that soon there will be thinking machines. And sorry, I may be outdated, I believe in the supremacy of my own brain. or whatever that brain can produce in a computer. And there are quite a few serious people in AI who share my views. I don't think there is anybody actually who believes that we can, we humans using our brain, our minds, can create a machine which is better than we are. Faster, yes, more intelligent, more creative. I don't think so. The latest craze is computational creativity. Interesting publications by some of my favorite philosophers, Margaret Bolton, for instance. Is she Margaret? Where is it? What started happening, the article came out in '94, and everybody and his or her research assistant started producing toy systems generating jokes. What I described, without even bothering to implement it, it was so primitive, was a system which generates light bulb jokes. That is, how many blanks does it take to change a light bulb? Then blank for the number and blank for the reason. What the computer did, it said that we never bothered even to implement. It was clear that it would work. It had a list of a category of people, ethnic, gender, professional, whatever, the number and the property. And what the computer did, it filling in the blanks with a predefined material. And so I wrote there honestly against Salvatore's protestation, saying that it diminishes our contribution. I said it shouldn't diminish our contribution, it should destroy our contribution, so that nobody ever even tried that. And that's exactly what everybody tried to do. They built any number of systems, toy systems. Jape is the best promoted one, which took the same form. It was, what's the word I'm blanking on? That would come back to me in a second. The same standard form and fill in the blanks. There was no understanding of natural language. There was definitely no insight on humor. The second system, which was produced by Kim Binstead, now a professor at Hawaii, I think, and then a PhD student at the University of Edinburgh under my friend and colleague Graham Ritchie, now retired, was the cross jokes. What do you get if you cross X with Y? The prototype for that was a Soviet joke of the 1950s, my Soviet childhood. What do you get if you cross a snake with a hedgehog? Can anybody guess? 10 meters of barbed wire. It's a Soviet joke. And Jake produced tons of jokes. Kim Binstead was masterfully promoting it. She was and is a very attractive, very telegenic woman who is a professional actress and a master presenter. Her fame peaked when she was on a panel with two very prominent people, including Steve Martin, who promoted Jake. In fact, that was no feat, it was a toy system. She used a brilliant argument to defend it. She said the output is terrible. Most of the results are very poor jokes. But don't humans produce very poor jokes also? And she actually ran an experiment when she got a bunch of humans producing cross jokes and J, and then she mixed them together, and she asked people to tell which of them are bad jokes produced by humans and which by computers, and humans failed. So that proves that the system works. Well, so there was an awful lot of that. Then more seriously, including Julia Taylor's PhD dissertation from the University of Cincinnati in computer science and engineering. Her major professor, Larry Maslach, went out on the limb to allow her to address humor in computer science and engineering and supporting her for 4 years. She built the first ever automatic joke detection. And joke detection is much more interesting and much more problematic. And she limited to children's jokes from a small corpus of jokes. She developed her own ontology, very limited ontology. And she showed that a very modest success rate, it was 57% or whatever, is actually an achievement because there was no hidden resources or hidden agenda. That's what the computer could do, and it was limited. And people tried to build on that as well. What gave, well, first in 1996 there was a conference at the University of Twente in Eindhoven, the eastern part of Holland, almost on the German border, to celebrate my great achievement in inventing computational humor. I went to the conference with the full intention to play out another Soviet joke on that. That one is more sophisticated, 1970s. Karl Marx lands in the middle of Moscow, alive and well, probably next to his monument across from the Bolshoi, and demands to address the Soviet audience on national TV. Well, you cannot say no to the classical Marxism and Leninism, right? So they allow, and he addresses it probably in pure Russian by saying, proletariat of the world, forgive me. The formula is proletariat of the world, unite. That was what everybody knew in the 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. That and the sentence that the specter of communism is roaming around Europe. I felt the same way. I've always been very modest. And so I felt like I have to apologize for leading people on a wild-goose chase. Entertaining, there is absolutely no research value on that. Fortunately, I was scheduled second, and the first speaker was a great friend of mine, I'm really a fan, Italian professor of computer science, Oliviero Stock, and a fellow humor researcher, who started his presentation by saying, I know what Victor has up his sleeve. I'm here to prove to you that computational humor is useful. For instance, I think he came up with the idea of edutainment, educational entertainment. How about put a small software program on desktop which will offer the operator to tell him or her a joke when appropriate. The program will watch the keystrokes, and if he prints the word, types the word camel, which of course we do all the time, the software will say, I have a joke about the camel, do you want to hear the joke? And maybe then the sysadmins will install those bothersome security packages or something like that they always tell the bosses they have done and never actually do. And from that, it progressed to other things. Next thing, Oliviero gets a 3 million euro grant from the European Union. NSF has never funded a project in humor research, to build an automatic application which will advise the inventors of acronyms whether it is funny or not, or whether it is ridiculous, and if such an application had been in place, that GM would not have tried to sell Chevy Nova in Mexico. And it was called, of course, acronymy, and it had some deliveries. The real thing is now. It doesn't exist then, and Julie and I have been trying to be granted, be funded for about 3 years, and we'll probably succeed next time around. There is social computing. Has anybody heard of social computing or socially intelligent computing? It's pretty much the same thing. Again, a friend in Europe, funded by the European Union, Professor Yuri Wilkes, had a grant called Companion, and it was to develop a computer friend to a shut-in, a lonely person, usually sick, usually geriatric patient who lives alone, has nobody to talk to. Social services come in and clean and feed or whatever, spend a few hours. Wouldn't it be nice for him or her to have a computer friend, a friend who would just check the person out? Could be like IBM Watson, which the media took for intelligence, and its creators, other first to tell, it has no intelligence and no understanding, would store an enormous amount of information, can tell stories and jokes also as well. Try to think of any human interlocutors, company friends. Is it possible to proceed without detecting humor? No, such a computer must detect humor, otherwise it will take everything seriously. The patient says, don't tell me about Malaysian plane, it will kill me. Well, the computer will decide that it will kill it and probably call 911. So the task for the computer to detect humor and generate humor appropriately has become very salient, I would say. So we will see systems like that. My interest, well, grant money to support students and so on and so forth. But mainly, if it can do that, then we understand how it works, because we have been able to formalize the rules and to program them. So,
How does satire play a role in your study of all this? You said it had to do with interpretation there.
I don't want to go there because with the resources that I have, the knowledge that I have, professional knowledge, things that I know in depth because I have invented them or whatever, I don't have the tools for doing that. Is satire a form of humor? Surely. Irony is a form of humor? Yeah, sort of, not necessarily. Sarcasm, which is usually in a very brittle way separated by irony, by increasing the hostile intent. Is it humor? All of that is humor for special purposes. I'm mimicking here what there's casual language, ordinary language, and there's language for special purposes. Poetry is language for special purposes. Anything which is defined by the genre with its limitation is English language for special purposes. This is humor for special purposes. So basically, somebody should take on themselves the burden of defining what those special purposes are. And I humbly submit to you, to the world, that it's not a linguist, a computational linguist or computational semanticist who should do it. I'm following Katrina Triesenberg, the young student objecting to Salvatore Attardo's humor theory for novels on the grounds that that should be left to literary scholars. Salvatore, unlike myself, did have some training, was a product of the Research University of Milan, where he earned his linguistic degree, working with tons and tons of literature courses, which he absolutely hated. And so he refused to recognize that literary scholars were capable of any such work, anything other than making him hate them. And don't you agree that people who know most are best, should be best qualified to define what irony is and what satire is, should be people in the literary genres. They have the practical knowledge. That's the story of my life and humor research. Linda Kuipers, a sociologist who hates theory. I said, you know what a good article in your field is, right? And you can tell it from bad one. You judge it all the time in your courses as editor in sociology, as a member of the promotion committees or whatever. All I want you to do is to think a little further than your intuition. What are your rules for saying that this is a good article and this is a bad article, this should be published and this should not? I submitted to you that researchers of irony, probably in literary studies, can tell irony from something else. Let them make it explicit to themselves and to the others. Then somebody like me will be able to see what we're facing, what kind of information the computer should get that people use for intuitive judgments. This is the formula for all artificial intelligence. Incidentally, there is an interesting problem that my co-author, Juliet Taylor, young as she is, forbids me to ever mention to the AI community. And this is a very interesting problem. Our mind, our judgment, our thinking is flawed. If I build an artificial intelligence system which does all of that, but without any mistakes and without any flaws, is it artificial intelligence? Have I modeled the human mind? See what I mean? Because I produce a perfect system, but isn't it interesting how people make mistakes, how I was showing the wrong slides from the wrong computer. No computer will be able to ever do that. Aren't we interested in the anatomy, as it were, of mistakes, of flaws? I'm scatterbrained today. When I don't sleep, I'm a very poor sleeper. My cognitive capacity is down. And that's very easy to handle. I'm just done. But when I oversleep, as I did this last night, I become scatterbrained. And that is absent-minded. It's much harder to model. In one such performance, I started projecting in a classroom, and it was 10, 15 years ago. I was one of the first to do that. And the projector didn't work, and I know all hype. I tried and this and that, and interfered with the programming, had to give up and change my plan for the lesson, which is easy. I hardly ever have one. But I didn't project. And at the end, this sly little thing, that 18-year-old girl who was sitting next to my station, as everybody was leaving, she said, "I was wondering, Professor, whether you had noticed that the cap was still on the lens." There is a joke to illustrate that as well. If you want to suffer through another 2 minutes, there was a series of jokes about Henry Kissinger at the time. There was Henry Kissinger, and how he's about the smartest person in the world. He's on a secret mission, shuttle somewhere in the Middle East, small plane, the captain himself, and remember the joke? No, I thought you...
Picturing Kissinger as a captain.
Yeah, the captain, and in the cabin, the Kissinger and orderlies, bodyguard, a young soldier. And the captain comes out and says, "Gentlemen, bad news, we are going trash, and we need to bail out. And the worst news is that we have only 2 parachutes. And I'm an old man, I'm single, nobody depended on me, so I'm responsible for you, so take the parachutes. And the soldier says, no, sir, it's an honor to die, not in battle, but performing my duty. You are both very important. You're an important captain and Mr. Kissinger, very important man. And Kissinger grabs the parachute and bails out. He says, I'm the smartest person in the world. I must have the parachute. And then the dialogue between the soldier and the captain starts again. You, not you. And the captain says, son, don't worry. The smartest man in the world just bailed out on the bank of rations. So that's how I. Anything else? Well, thank you very much.
Okay, so